The leather folder felt heavier than stone in my hands inside. Every receipt of his college years, every drop of my sweat, turned into paper. My son looked at me with ice in his eyes and said, "You are not my father." My grip trembled. The folder nearly slipped, but why did his words sound rehearsed, like someone else had written them? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. At first, nothing screamed wrong. The kettle sighed, the furnace clicked, and the winter light sat pale on the kitchen tiles, like a thin sheet of milk. But the silence had an odd seam to it, as if the house had been mended in a hurry and the stitch wouldn't hold. I set the leather folder on the oak table. Same place as always. Spine parallel with the salt shaker. Habit as precise as prayer. The coffee smelled like the mornings when tuition bills used to arrive, bitter, dependable, and a little bracing. The window pane showed a sliver of frost lifting off the lawn, each blade of grass bright and brittle. Somewhere on the street, a pickup coughed itself awake, a dog barked twice, and then thought better of it. I poured 2 mugs, one for me, one for him. The steam curled like handwriting I couldn't read anymore. He came in barefoot, phone in his hand, eyes not in the room. He swiped, glanced, swiped again. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice the way you talk to sleeping horses. He didn't answer, just reached past me for the cabinet, the hinge squealing the way I'd meant to fix last summer. He took a mug and didn't look at the one I'd poured. The leather folder rested between us. He didn't glance at that either. "You've got class later?" I tried again. He shrugged like the question weighed too much. "Stop hovering," he said. Not mean, but not careful. The words landed and stayed there, sticky on the tile between our feet. He added sugar to his coffee and stirred without clinking the spoon, like the sound of a thing touching another thing offended him now. "I'm not hovering," I said. "I'm standing." It came out lighter than I felt. He sipped, grimaced, and tossed the rest into the sink, coffee circling the drain in a brown, guilty spiral. "College coffee's stronger," he said, which was a true sentence that somehow hurt worse than a lie. I watched that spiral disappear and wondered what else he could make vanish with a shrug. Anna padded in, hair pulled back, sweater sleeves pushed to the elbows, like she was about to wash the day itself. "Morning," she said, and there was warmth there, a small light in a cold room. She touched my shoulder as she passed, subtle, quick, like she knew how much air had been taken out. "You up early again," she said, and smiled, but her eyes flicked to the folder and back, as if the leather had burned her. "Habit," I said. "Old men survive on habit." She laughed, but softly, like laughter could break something. He leaned his hip against the counter and scrolled. "I've got a meeting," he said. "Internship thing." He said it like the word internship had graduated into royalty, while my words still wore work boots. "You'll be home for dinner?" I asked. He inhaled through his nose, long and bored. "Stop treating me like a child." The sentence didn't ask, it announced. "I'm not," I said. "I'm asking if you'll be here to eat food in the house where you live." He snorted, low. His face stayed handsome and hard, the way mirrors like to lie. Anna set a plate of toast on the table, butter melting into soft gold lakes. "Eat," she told him. Gentle. "Hungry brains don't make good choices." "My choices are fine," he said, and didn't move. "He worries," she said. He looked at me with that clean, new contempt people try on in college towns. "He doesn't need to," he said. The leather folder caught the light and looked like the back of a small animal alive, waiting, refusing to speak. I took the folder's strap between thumb and forefinger, felt the groove my skin had carved there across years. Receipts, letters, bursar printouts, notes from advisors who signed with looping optimism everything that proved what love looks like when it is printed and dated and due on the 15th. "We could go over the loan schedule," I said. "Deadlines shift sometimes. I called the bank yesterday." He exhaled a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "Dad, please," he said. And the word dad had edges. "I know how to open a calendar." Killer line rose before I could stop it. Respect is the rent you pay to live under my roof. It surprised both of us with how steady it sounded. He blinked once. Then his mouth found a blade. Then lower your rent, he said. Anna flinched like a door had slammed in a far room. She reached for his wrist. He let her fingers rest there, but didn't look down. He's trying, she whispered. We all are. She met my eyes, and there was a question in hers I couldn't answer. How did we get here this fast? I carried my coffee to the table, set it beside the folder, and Saturday, the chair complained the way wood does when it knows you. The furnace kicked on again, a long breath the house and I took together. I was thinking, I said, voice thin as fishing line, about calling Coach McCallan. He still asks about you. Said there's a spot if you want to stop. He cut in. Please. I'm not a project. The word project rolled around the kitchen and knocked into everything before it died. He walked past the table, shoulder a little wider now than the doorframe he used to bump his head on when he grew too fast at 14. He reached the hallway and paused. For a second I saw the boy. Not the version of him college had sanded down to an angle. The boy who had fallen asleep with cleats on, and cried when the dog died and took my hand at the fair because the world was too loud. It flashed, then went dark. I'll be late, he said. Don't wait up. I always do, I said. But I said it inside my mouth, to my tongue, to the old man who stands inside me, counting the miles. The screen door squealed and snapped. Not hard, just final. The house exhaled in the way a room does when a storm moves off. Anna's hands found the sink. She washed nothing, water running like a time you couldn't get back. He's under pressure, she said, her voice a bridge with a weight on it. They push them to be someone. He's always been someone, I said. He didn't need a campus to have a name. She turned, drying her hands on a towel that had a red stripe. He loves you, she said. And I didn't ask her if she believed it. I just wanted the sentence to float for a second without breaking. She glanced at the folder again. You keep that close, she said, almost playful. You'd think it was your heart. Some days, I said. It beats louder. She nodded, eyes soft. And in the softness I saw her caught on a fence between two fields. Blood in one direction, vows in the other. I'll talk to him, she offered. Talk is cheap until it costs you, I said. And that was unkind. So I softened it with a smile that felt like tape. Thank you. She left the kitchen for the bedroom, her steps small and careful, like the floor might change its mind. The heater hummed. The refrigerator clicked and settled. I poured another coffee and drank it slower, the bitterness pacing itself on my tongue. I opened the folder just enough to see the top sheet. A bursar invoice from 3 years ago, November, stamped paid. My name, his name, the amount, the truth. I closed the flap and traced the edge with my thumb until it warmed. A jay shrieked in the maple out back, a bright, rude sound that made the quiet tilt. I stood, rinsed my cup, set it upside down on the drying rack where the ring of water would print a circle like a target. Habit moved me through the small chores, the sponge, the trash bag tie, the mail I stacked by the phone no one called anymore. By the time I turned back, the light had shifted on the table. It ran along the leather like a blade and then stopped. Something was off. Not dramatic, not loud. The folder didn't sit where I left it. Its spine no longer lined with the salt shaker, the strap angled like a compass pointing where I hadn't pointed it. The little groove my thumb lives in had rotated a hair's breadth toward the hallway. Someone had touched it. Not enough to open it, just enough to let me know they could. I stared at that small, disobedient angle until the furnace quit and the house became so quiet I could hear the paper inside settle, as if it were breathing on its own. It began with whispers, not shouts. At the grocery store, a bag of oranges slipped from my arms when I heard two neighbors talking near the canned beans. Their voices were hushed, but not enough. He says he's independent now, doesn't need his old man. The words clung to me like burrs in the hem of my coat. I bent to pick up the oranges, but my hands shook. One rolled under the shelf, lost to dust. The leather folder pressed heavy against my ribs from inside my jacket, as if it had overheard too. I walked past them without a word, though both pairs of eyes followed me. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in my own town. Back home, I set the groceries down on the counter harder than I meant to. The sound startled Anna, who was rinsing dishes. She turned, drying her hands on a towel. "Everything okay, Dad?" Her eyes searched mine. Hesitant. That little hesitation said more than any sentence. Before I could answer, Derek walked in, hair gelled, smile crooked. He plucked an apple from the bag and bit into it without looking at me. Juice ran down his chin, careless. "You've been busy," I said evenly. "Neighbors seem to know more about you than I do." He shrugged, chewing. "People talk, not my problem. It becomes my problem when they whisper that I'm nothing but your wallet." My voice cut sharper than I planned. The faucet dripped once behind us, loud in the silence. Derek's eyes flicked to Anna, then back to me. His jaw tightened. "Then maybe stop listening. Let me live my life." "That life," I said, placing the folder on the table between us, "was built on every dollar in here." The strap hung loose, like a vein about to burst. He leaned on the counter, apple half eaten in his hand, then let it go. "You did your part." "No," I said, steady. "Parents don't retire from respect." Anna shifted uncomfortably. "He's just tired, Dad. Don't push him." "I'm not pushing," I said, softer. "I'm holding a line." Derek's face hardened into something I didn't recognize. "Here's the truth. You either trust me to run things, or you step aside. I don't need you checking receipts anymore." His voice was flat, practiced. The ultimatum landed like a gavel. For a moment, the kitchen was a courtroom. Anna, the silent juror, me, the accused, Derek, the prosecutor, with fire in his eyes. My hands rested on the folder, and I felt every page of sacrifice pressing back. Killer line left my mouth before I could stop it. "Trust isn't given to the loudest voice. It's earned by the quietest actions." He smirked, a blade hidden in a smile. "Then stop hovering, and maybe you'll see mine." He brushed past me, apple core still dripping juice, and left a red trail across the counter. Anna looked torn, her lips pressed tight. She touched my arm briefly. "I'll talk to him. He's under pressure." I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. Outside, wind rattled the branches against the window, like knuckles against glass. I gathered the groceries, one by one, trying to rebuild order. But when I looked down, the folder had shifted again, tilted open just enough to show the corner of a receipt. A paid stamp in fading ink, a reminder of years they wanted erased. That night, when I stepped onto the porch for air, the same two neighbors from the grocery store passed by on their walk. They didn't wave. One leaned toward the other and muttered just loud enough, "He's being replaced." The words stung more than the cold wind. I tightened my coat and clutched the folder closer. The house behind me glowed warm, but it didn't feel like home anymore. A single receipt slipped loose from the folder, carried by the wind across the porch, until it landed face up in the streetlight, my name and Derek's tuition, printed bold for anyone to read. The morning light broke hard through the blinds, slicing the kitchen into bars like a cage. I sat with the leather folder in front of me, its strap loosened, papers spilling just enough to show their age. The house was too quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the wall clock each second, tapping at my patience. Derek walked in with his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. His cologne was too sharp, cutting through the smell of coffee. He didn't glance at me, didn't glance at the folder, just reached for the car keys from the counter. "We need to talk," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. He froze for half a beat, then turned slowly. "About what now?" "This." I opened the folder, spread the papers like cards in a game. Tuition receipts, loan records, account slips, my years of labor in black and white. "These are my life on paper, and you've been pulling threads out of it." He gave a thin smile. "Dad, I'm not a kid. Stop keeping score." Anna, who had been buttering toast, looked up nervously. Maybe we should all calm down. No, I cut in. The bank called. Withdrawals I didn't authorize. Transfers with your name written on them. Derek chuckled, shaking his head. It's my future, Dad. My career. I needed funds. Isn't that what parents are for? Something snapped inside me. Parents provide. Children respect. That's the trade. His smirk sharpened. Then maybe you overpaid. Anna gasped, dropping the knife. Butter smeared across the counter like a wound. I held up a slip I'd found, tucked inside the folder, a withdrawal for $5,000. Signed in handwriting that almost looked like mine. Almost. This isn't respect, I said. This is theft wearing my face. Derek stepped forward, plucked the slip from my hand, and slid it back into the folder like a dealer discarding a useless card. Don't be dramatic. It's an investment. An investment doesn't buy champagne and leather jackets, I shot back. Anna's eyes flicked between us, wide and pleading. Derek, please, he has a right to be upset. He ignored her. You want me to be something? Let me build it my way. Stop clutching papers like they're chains. I leaned across the table, folder under my palm, and met his eyes. These papers are chains. Chains I carried for you. And you're not cutting them, you're wrapping them around my throat. For a long second, we just stared. Then he leaned back, grabbed his bag, and slung it higher on his shoulder. You'll see. In a few years, none of this will matter. I'll pay you back 10 times over. Killer line left my mouth like a blade. Respect can't be repaid with interest. Once it's gone, it's gone. He turned to leave, but Anna caught his wrist. Derek, stop. He deserves honesty. He pulled free. Honesty? He can't handle it. Then to me, you raised me on sacrifice. Don't cry when I spend it. He slammed the door behind him. Silence dropped heavy. Anna wiped at the butter on the counter, her hands shaking. He's under a lot of pressure, she whispered. I sank into the chair, folder still open, the papers trembling in the draft from the door. My pulse was loud in my ears. On top of the receipts lay that forged slip. The ink smudged slightly, like it had been signed in a hurry. I thought of the bank officer's warning yesterday. Your accounts show someone else's hand. The words echoed now, truer than ever. The folder felt heavier than before, as if every page inside had shifted from proof of love to evidence of betrayal. I closed it, but the sound of the flap snapping shut felt more like a gavel. That afternoon, the banker called again. His voice was calm but serious. Sir, there's a pending transfer request for $20,000. And the signature, it isn't yours. The banker's warning kept circling in my head, like a crow that wouldn't leave the fence. $20,000, hanging in the air, waiting to be stolen with my name scrawled beneath it. I carried that knowledge like a stone in my chest as I set the leather folder on the dining table that evening. The house smelled of roasted chicken, rosemary, and something sharp beneath it, tension, cooked down all afternoon. The table was set for 3. Candles burned low, the kind Anna liked to light when she wanted the air softer. She sat with her hands folded, eyes down, as if praying for a night without raised voices. Derek came in late, tie loose, cologne thick enough to choke. He kissed Anna's cheek, ignoring me, then sat at the head of the table as though it were his by right. We ate in silence at first, forks scraping plates, glasses clinking. Finally, Derek leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. We need to talk about boundaries. His tone was calm, but underneath, it was steel. I set my fork down, slow. Boundaries? He gestured toward the folder on the table, its strap glinting in the candlelight. This obsession, the receipts, the calls to the bank. You've done enough. Let go. Anna shifted in her seat. Maybe we can talk this through. No, Derek cut her off. It's time he learns to step back. This is my life now. My jaw tightened. Your life was bought with every page in that folder. You don't erase that with a speech. He leaned forward, eyes hard. Here's the deal, Dad. Either you trust me to handle things my way, no questions asked, or you step aside. completely. The air went thin. Anna's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Derek," she whispered, her voice cracking. I stared at him. My son, my blood, had turned my sacrifice into a bargaining chip. "Step aside," I repeated, each word a nail driven into wood. He smirked, cruel and young. "That's right. Obey my choices or stay out of my way." The words landed heavier than any insult. Anna's face flushed, torn between loyalty to her husband and the shame burning in her eyes. She looked at me, silently begging me not to make it worse. Killer line rose in me like fire. "You don't demand respect in this house, you earn it. Or you lose it." His smirk widened, poisonous. "Then maybe you've already lost." The candle flames trembled, casting shadows across the walls, like ghosts of every sacrifice I'd ever made. My hands tightened on the folder. The leather was warm, almost alive, as though it too waited for my decision. Anna whispered, "Please, both of you just eat. Don't do this." But the meal had already gone cold. I looked at Derek one last time. Then, without another word, I pushed my chair back. The wood groaned, a sound that filled the room like a verdict. I rose, folder in hand, and walked toward the hallway. Derek's voice followed me, mocking. "What, no comeback? No lecture?" I didn't answer. The silence was my weapon now. In my bedroom, I opened the closet, pulled down an old suitcase, and set it on the bed. The zipper screeched as it opened, echoing like thunder in the small room. Shirt by shirt, I began to pack. The folder laid carefully on top of everything, my most valuable possession. More than clothes, more than comfort. Anna's voice floated in from the doorway, broken. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere respect still matters." Her eyes welled, her lips pressed tight. She wanted to say more, but Derek's footsteps came down the hall. His shadow filled the doorway behind her. "You're really leaving?" he asked, disbelief coating his words. I closed the suitcase, the snap of the clasps sharp as a gunshot. "You told me to step aside," I said. "I'm taking your advice." His smirk faltered for the first time. "Fine," he spat. "Go. Don't come crawling back when you realize you can't live without us." I lifted the suitcase, folder balanced on top, and brushed past him. The hallway light flickered as I walked, shadows chasing me to the door. The door shut behind me, suitcase heavy in one hand, the folder clutched in the other. For the first time in decades, the house I'd built didn't feel like mine, and I knew I might never walk back inside. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and bleach, a cocktail of other people's failures. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, yellowed where the sun once tried to brighten it. I set the suitcase on the thin mattress, laid the leather folder on the table beside the single lamp, and sat down heavily. For the first time in years, the house I'd built, the walls I painted, the roof I mended, none of it belonged to me tonight. The silence pressed in, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind that buzzes, a silence so loud it drills behind your ears. I reached for the folder, unbuckled the strap, and opened it wide on the desk. The papers fanned out like a deck of cards. Receipts, tuition letters, bank slips, and at the bottom a set of documents I hadn't seen before. I pulled them closer, heart thudding. A loan agreement. $20,000. The signature on the dotted line looked eerily like mine, only sharper, rushed. My name, bent into someone else's hand. Beneath it, his name witness, guarantor written bold. My son. My fingers traced the ink, as if touch could tell me whether it was real. The folder no longer felt like proof of sacrifice. It felt like evidence in a crime. My crime? Or his? The motel phone rang suddenly, harsh and jarring. I jumped, knocking papers across the desk. I picked up. A familiar voice spoke low. "Pastor Green." "I heard," he said. "People are talking." My mouth went dry. "Talking about what?" "That you've lost your grip. Derek's been telling folks you're confused. That you shouldn't be trusted with money. Said he's taking over your affairs." "I thought you should know." His voice carried both pity and caution, like a man afraid he was betraying a confidence. I closed my eyes. So this was the trap. Not just the forged paper, but the whisper campaign. Discredit me before I could defend myself. Thank you, Pastor, I managed. My hand clenched the phone until the cord twisted. Take care, he said, then hung up. I stood there in the dim room, the folder open, the forged signature staring up at me. My throat burned with something that wasn't just anger, it was shame. Shame that my own son would rather bury me alive in rumors than look me in the eye. I gathered the papers, stacked them neat again, and tied the folder shut. It felt heavier now, as though each page weighed a pound. Later, I walked to the corner diner for a cheap meal. The neon sign sputtered above me, buzzing like a dying insect. Inside, the booths were half filled, conversations buzzing soft. I ordered coffee, slid into the back booth, and tried to ignore the sideways looks. 2 men at the counter leaned close, whispering. I caught fragments. Signed his house away, can't manage his own bills. Poor guy's slipping. My stomach twisted. Their eyes flicked to me once, then quickly away. Anna wasn't here to soften the edges, to reassure me. She was at home, caught between loyalty and fear. Derek had drawn the battle lines, and he'd started with my reputation. The waitress set the mug in front of me. Rough night? She asked, kindness in her tone. I nodded, unable to speak. She gave me a sympathetic smile before moving on. I stirred sugar into the coffee, though I never took it sweet. The spoon clinked against the mug, a sound sharp enough to draw a few more glances, their whispers wrapped tighter around me. In a small town, truth doesn't matter. The story that spreads first wins. Back at the motel, I sat again at the desk, folder open, the forged loan paper glowing under the weak lamp. I drew a pen from my pocket, circled the false signature, and underlined my son's name beneath it. The circle looked like a noose, the underline like a knife. Killer line broke the silence. He didn't just steal my money, he tried to steal my name. I closed the folder, placed it neatly on the desk, and sat back. The lamp buzzed, the clock ticked, and outside, the neon sign of the diner flickered red against the motel window. My phone buzzed again this time. Not the motel phone, but my cell. A message from an unknown number. Sign the papers, old man, or we'll make sure everyone believes you already did. The text glowed on my phone screen long after I set it down. Sign the papers, old man, or we'll make sure everyone believes you already did. My hands shook, but not from fear. Something steadier burned through me, slow and deliberate. I turned to the desk, where the leather folder lay, its strap taut, holding in every receipt, every sacrifice, and now every piece of evidence they thought would bury me. Tonight, it would not bury me. Tonight, it would arm me. I opened the folder, laid out the pages in rows. Receipts to the left, invoices in the middle, bank slips to the right. Each sheet a soldier in a quiet war. I switched on the motel desk lamp, its yellow glow casting long shadows, and pulled my laptop from the suitcase. One by one, I logged into the accounts. Tuition fund, closed. Mortgage autopay, canceled. Joint emergency account, drained and transferred into my name alone. Credit card authorized users, revoked. With each click, I felt the shackles lift from my wrists. The phone buzzed again, Derek calling this time. I let it ring until it died. A voicemail followed. His voice was sharp, trembling. Why did the insurance payment bounce? What are you doing? Call me back. I deleted it. Another voicemail came, his tone rising. Dad, you can't just, this is reckless. Stop it, now. Delete. And another. If you don't put it back, I swear. Delete. Each deletion was a hammer strike, breaking the chains link by link. By midnight, the account stood clean. For the first time in years, the numbers reflected only me. No leeches attached, no hands reaching in. My balance was lean, scarred by years of giving. But it was mine. I leaned back, the folder still open on the desk. My reflection in the motel window looked older, harder, but something else freer. The motel phone rang again. I picked up this time, already knowing who it was. "Dad." Derek's voice came hot and ragged. "What the hell did you do?" "I made sure the money I worked for stays mine," I said. "You can't just cut me off." "I can," I said calmly. And I did. His voice cracked with fury. "You'll regret this. You hear me? You'll regret it." I looked at the folder, fingers resting on the forged signature I'd circled earlier. "No, son. The only regret here is that I trusted you to honor what I gave." For a moment, silence. Then the line went dead. I sat there, listening to the hum of the lamp and the faint thrum of trucks passing on the highway outside. My heart slowed, steady as the clock on the wall. Revenge didn't feel like fire, it felt like ice, calm and cutting. The folder sat at the center of the desk, heavier than before, but now it carried something else. Resolve. Killer line rose out of me, steady as breath. For the first time in decades, my balance belonged only to me. I closed the folder, strapped it shut, and placed it at the edge of the desk like a sealed verdict. Outside, footsteps echoed down the motel corridor, slow, deliberate, stopping right at my door. A shadow shifted beneath the crack of light, waiting. The shadow under my motel door lingered for a full minute before moving away. I sat still in the chair, folder clutched to my chest, listening to the retreating footsteps fade into the night. It wasn't fear that kept me frozen, it was the realization that my silence, my refusal to bend, had finally drawn them into open war. By morning, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls, 22 in total. The first few were Derek, voice brimming with anger. "Why did the card decline at the pharmacy? What did you do?" Then his wife's voice, shrill and venomous. "You're ruining us. You'll regret this, old man." I played each one, then deleted them, one by one, as methodically as I had canceled the accounts. My thumb pressed erase, like it was pressing out sparks before they could turn into fire. But then, tucked between their fury, came Anna's voice, soft, trembling. "Dad, please, I know you're hurt, but maybe we can talk. He's not thinking straight. Just call me back, okay?" That message I couldn't delete. It stayed, glowing lonely on my screen. I left the motel to breathe, walking past the neon diner sign that buzzed even in daylight. People's eyes followed me differently now. At the gas station, I caught a pair of teens whispering as I paid for coffee. "That's him. The one who got cheated by his own kid." The words weren't cruel, just curious. But curiosity cuts just as deep when your dignity's on the line. Back in my room, the folder waited on the desk like a sentinel. I laid my hand on it, steadying myself. The weight reminded me of everything still. Mine, my name, my labor, my truth. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the motel curtains, the calls turned into knocks. Hard, impatient raps against my door. I froze, listening. A voice followed Derek's wife. "Open up. We know you're in there." I didn't move. Her fist struck again. "You think you can embarrass us? Cut us off? You owe us after everything we put up with." Her words were sharp, but I heard something else beneath them: panic. Without my money, their world was cracking. Then Derek's voice, lower, threatening. "If you don't fix this, we'll get the law involved. We'll tell everyone you're unstable, that you forged your own papers." I looked at the circled forgery inside the folder. The irony nearly made me laugh. The knock stopped. Silence, then the sound of footsteps moving away. But before they left, Derek shouted down the hallway, "You can't hide forever. You need us more than we need you." Killer line formed in my chest, though I spoke it only to the empty room. Need isn't love, and I'd rather starve on my own than feast on false loyalty. I sat back down, folder open, papers spread like a shield around me. The motel light buzzed overhead, a tired witness. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail. I let it play on speaker. It was Anna. Her voice cracked. "They're saying you're sick, Dad, that you don't know what you're doing. I don't know what to believe. Please, please don't shut me out." Her words pierced deeper than Derek's threats ever could. I closed the folder, tied the strap tight, and set it by the door. Whatever came next, I knew this much. I wasn't the one who had to explain myself. Outside, headlights swept across the motel blinds, stopping right at my window. The engine idled, waiting, as if the night itself had come to collect a debt. The car outside my motel window idled for nearly an hour. Every few minutes, headlights swept across the blinds, painting the walls in harsh stripes of white before cutting out again. I sat at the desk, the leather folder open, pretending to read the same line on a receipt while my ears tracked the hum of the engine. They wanted me rattled, but silence had become my armor. When the engine finally roared off, I thought I'd been spared a scene. I was wrong. The next morning, I walked across the parking lot toward the diner. My hands ached for coffee strong enough to wash the night out of my head. But as soon as I pushed the door open, the chatter dipped. Heads turned. Whispers rose like smoke. He was already there. Derek, sitting in a booth with his wife, both dressed sharp, their postures rehearsed. They looked less like family and more like salespeople about to pitch a lie. I almost turned around, but the folder under my arm kept me rooted. I walked to the counter, ordered coffee, and sat where the whole room could see me. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. Derek stood, smoothing his tie. "Dad?" he said loudly, performing for the crowd. "We were just talking about you." The waitress froze mid-pour. A man at the counter leaned closer, every ear bent toward us. "What are you telling them?" I asked. My voice calm but heavy. "That you're not well," he replied, tone dripping with pity. "That you're confused, forging documents, draining accounts. People should know." My knuckles whitened around the folder. "Forging?" his wife chimed in, voice sweet but sharp. "It's sad, really. You've worked so hard, but maybe it's time someone more capable handled things." I opened the folder. Slow, deliberate. Pages spread across the table in neat rows. Receipts, loan slips, statements. I held one up, the loan with the forged signature circled in black. "This," I said, "is forgery, but it isn't mine." The room leaned forward collectively. Derek's face flickered, but he caught himself. "You can't prove that." "I don't have to." I slid the paper onto the center table, letting the diners see. The bank called me. They confirmed the application, signed under my name, witnessed by yours. The color drained from his face. For the first time, the script slipped. Gasps rippled through the diner. Someone muttered at the counter, not bothering to lower their voice. "The son turned thief." That sentence spread faster than wildfire. It wasn't just rumor anymore, it was declaration. Derek slammed his fist on the table. "You don't understand how the world works. I was trying to secure our future." "Our?" I cut in. "Or yours?" Anna appeared in the doorway just then, her eyes wide, hair uncombed as if she'd rushed here. She looked at me, then at Derek. "Tell me, it isn't true." His wife grabbed his arm, tugging. "Don't answer that here." But Derek's pride was a leaking dam. "Fine," he spat. "Yes, I did it. Because you," he jabbed a finger at me, "would rather hoard scraps in that damn folder than trust me with the future." The room erupted in whispers, louder than before, no longer hiding their judgment. "After all that college money? Ungrateful brat." Poor man raised a thief. Anna sank into a booth, covering her mouth with her hands. Tears brimmed in her eyes. For once, her silence wasn't loyalty. It was disbelief. Killer line left my mouth, steady as steel. "You didn't just steal from me. You stole from the man who believed in you." The waitress gathered the empty plates, her hands trembling as she set them down. No one looked at Derek with respect now. The tide had turned. He grabbed his wife's hand and stormed out, slamming the diner door so hard, the bell above it rattled like chains. The room buzzed with voices, the story already cemented in the minds of everyone who'd witnessed it. I gathered the papers slowly, sliding them back into the folder. Each page slid in like a weapon sheathed. Anna stayed behind, her face pale. She whispered, barely audible over the diner hum, "Dad, I didn't know." I placed a hand on the folder, met her eyes. "You weren't supposed to. He wanted you blind." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't defend him this time. She just nodded, small and broken. As I left the diner, a man in a suit brushed past me, slipping a business card into my palm. "You'll need me soon," he murmured. "Lawyer." His card felt as heavy as the folder in my hand. The lawyer's card weighed in my palm all afternoon, heavier than metal, heavier than guilt. I sat in the motel room staring at it, the leather folder open beside me. The words from the diner still echoed, "The sun-turned thief." The crowd hadn't needed convincing. They'd seen enough. But whispers weren't justice. Justice had to be written, stamped, delivered. The next morning, I put on my cleanest shirt, the one that still held a faint smell of cedar from the closet back home, and walked into the lawyer's office downtown. The building was neat, brick with tall windows, the kind of place that held both secrets and solutions. The receptionist led me into a room with walls lined in leather-bound books. The man himself, Robert Keller, rose from behind the desk, shook my hand firmly, and gestured for me to sit. "You've got the look of someone carrying more than his fair share," he said, voice calm, practiced. I placed the folder on the table between us. The strap snapped as I opened it, pages spilling across the polished wood. "My son forged my name, tried to steal 20,000 from the bank. He spread lies in town, told people I was senile, unstable. Here's the proof." Keller's eyes sharpened. He picked up the loan slip with the circled signature, studied it, then leaned back. "It's sloppy, not even a close match. He'll hang himself on this alone." "I don't want him to hang," I said, though the bitterness in my chest told me part of me did. "I want him stopped." "That's where I come in." Keller slid a yellow legal pad across the desk, uncapped his pen. "We'll file for a restraining order, keep him off your accounts, your property, eviction papers if he's still living in your house. And with this forgery, we can open a fraud case. It's more than enough." The weight in my shoulders lifted slightly, though it wasn't relief, it was resolve settling in. "How long before he knows?" "By tomorrow," Keller said. "The sheriff will deliver the papers. And believe me, the whole town will know before the ink dries." I closed the folder, the strap tight, as if sealing the plan inside. The lamp on his desk reflected off the leather, a quiet signal of dignity restored. Killer line left my lips steady. For 30 years, I signed checks. Today, I signed their eviction. Keller gave a small nod, the kind professionals give when they know they've just lit the fuse on something irreversible. I walked out of his office lighter, the folder tucked firm under my arm. Outside, the autumn wind carried leaves skittering across the sidewalk, brittle and dry, like old debts finally paid. Back at the motel, I set the folder on the bed and sat beside it. My phone buzzed again, Derek's number. I let it ring out. A voicemail followed, venomous. "Don't think you've won. You'll regret dragging strangers into this." I deleted it without listening twice. This time, silence was louder than his rage. As night fell, I packed my suitcase again. Tomorrow, the sheriff would carry papers heavier than any rumor. Tomorrow, my son would realize money wasn't power. Truth was. Through the thin motel curtains, I saw flashing headlights sweep into the parking lot and stop a sheriff's cruiser. The officer stepped out, folder of his own under his arm, walking toward my door. The strike had already begun. The sheriff's cruiser had been the first crack. By the next week, the dam split wide open. I sat in the motel diner every morning now, coffee steaming beside the leather folder, listening to the murmurs that traveled faster than truth. Derek's name was on everyone's tongue, not with pride, but with ridicule. Thought he was the golden boy. Imagine forging your own father's signature. Gossip traveled in small towns like wildfire. And my son was already the ash. The first call came from a number I didn't recognize. A deep-voiced man introduced himself as a collections officer. "Mr. Carter," he said, We've had multiple missed payments from your son Derek. He listed you as guarantor. I clenched the folder tighter. I never signed anything for him. Check your records. There was a pause, paper shuffling in the background. Sir, his application is under investigation. Forgery suspected. When the man hung up, my chest carried a strange mixture. Sorrow, yes, but also vindication. Every lie Derek stacked was toppling now, one debt at a time. That evening, I heard from Anna. She slipped into the motel diner, her hair tied back, eyes red from crying. She slid into the booth across from me. He lost his job, she whispered. The bank called his boss. They don't want a fraud risk on the payroll. She stared at the tabletop, ashamed. He told me he had everything under control. He told me you were the one losing grip. Her voice cracked. I defended him, Dad. I told people you were just stressed. And now, her words broke off. She covered her face with her hands. I reached across the table, rested my palm on the leather folder. Truth defends itself, Anna. Sooner or later, it always does. The diner door opened then. Derek walked in. Not the confident, polished son I'd raised through school, but a shell of him. His tie was gone, shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow. People noticed him, turned back to their meals with cold judgment. That silence weighed more than any insult. He spotted us, stormed over. You think this makes you the hero? His voice was raw, desperate. My job's gone. Creditors are at my door. People look at me like I'm dirt. I stayed seated, calm. That's not me, Derek. That's you. Your actions brought this. He slammed his fist on the table, making the cups rattle. You could fix this. You could tell them it was a mistake. I placed the folder square between us, sliding it forward. This folder doesn't lie, neither do I. The waitress rushed over, her face pale. Sir, please. Not here. But the whole diner was already watching. Derek's wife tugged at his arm. Let's go, she whispered, but he jerked free. His voice rose louder. You think you've won, old man? You're just dragging us all down. A man at the counter muttered, not bothering to keep it quiet. He dragged himself. Another voice added, and his wife too. The words landed like stones. Anna flinched at the whispers. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't deny them. For the first time, she looked at Derek with something other than loyalty. She looked at him with truth. He stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched, but no words left. The facade he'd built, bright smile, polished future, proud speeches collapsed in full view of the community. He turned on his heel and stormed out, the bell above the diner door clanging like a final judgment. His wife followed, head down. The room stayed quiet a moment longer. Then someone started clapping. Slow, steady. Others joined, not cheering for me exactly, but for the truth that had finally surfaced. Killer line formed in my throat, but I spoke it only to myself as I closed the folder. Lies are heavy, but they collapse under their own weight. That night, back at the motel, my phone buzzed again. A message from Keller, my lawyer. Court date confirmed. Fraud charges filed. He'll have to face the judge. The courthouse smelled of dust and polished wood, that strange mix of age and order. I sat in the back pew, the leather folder balanced on my lap like scripture, while the townsfolk filled the benches. Whispers fluttered through the air like moths. They weren't here just for the legal proceeding, they were here for the spectacle. Derek entered flanked by his wife, his shoulders hunched but his chin forced high. He wore the only suit he had left, but the wrinkles told a story his pride could not cover. Anna trailed behind, eyes swollen, her loyalty bleeding thinner by the day. People leaned toward each other, muttering, "There's the forger. Can you imagine doing that to your own father?" The judge called the session to order. Papers rustled. The sheriff delivered the documents to the bench, the same ones Robert Keller had helped me prepare. I kept my hands on the folder, thumb tracing the strap, feeling the heartbeat of justice inside. The prosecutor spoke first, voice measured. Forgery, attempted fraud, financial misrepresentation. Each word struck like a hammer. Derek sat stiff, face pale. His wife squeezed his hand, but even she avoided his eyes. Then Keller rose. His presence was steady, calm. He laid out the evidence, page after page, receipts, withdrawals, the forged loan document with my name twisted into something unrecognizable. Each sheet carried from my folder to the judge's bench felt like a nail in the coffin of Derek's lies. The crowd shifted, restless. Some shook their heads. Some whispered. The sound grew louder when Keller pointed directly at my son and said, "He forged not only financial documents, but his own father's dignity." Derek's voice cracked when he tried to object. "That's not he's twisting it." The judge silenced him with a glance. "You'll have your turn." I looked at Anna. She stared at the floor, hands wringing. When she finally glanced up, her eyes met mine across the room. There was no defense left in her gaze, only sorrow. The prosecutor asked me to take the stand. I rose slowly, folder in my arms, and placed it carefully before me. My voice carried not anger, but weight. "Every page in here is a sacrifice I made for my son. College tuition, loans I paid off, nights I worked double shifts, and he repaid it by trying to steal the very name I signed them with." Gasps filled the room. The words didn't need embellishment. The truth was enough. Killer line came sharp and clean. He didn't just forge my signature, he tried to forge my life. The judge nodded, tapping his gavel once. "Proceed." By the end, Derek's head hung low. The town had heard enough. His wife's hand slipped from his arm. Anna wept quietly in the back, her tears cutting through the silence harder than any accusation. When the judge adjourned, the crowd spilled out into the hallway, buzzing like hornets. Some stopped to shake my hand. Some whispered, "Good man," under their breath. Respect, the kind that had been stolen from me, was slowly being returned. I stepped outside into the sunlight, folder under my arm. The courthouse steps were lined with people, reporters scribbling notes, neighbors gossiping in tight circles. Derek emerged moments later, his name now ash in every mouth. A woman in the crowd snapped a picture of him with her phone. Her voice rang out, sharp and merciless. "Smile, Derek. The whole town's watching the fall of the golden boy." The courthouse steps emptied slowly, the crowd spilling into the town square like floodwater after a storm. Voices rose, opinions clashed, but one truth settled heavy in the air. Derek Carter was no longer the man people thought he was. I walked back to the motel with the leather folder under my arm, its strap dug into my hand, not with burden, but with purpose. Inside, the papers had shifted from sacrifice to weapon, from quiet love to public proof. And now, it was time to turn proof into punishment. That night, I spread the folder's contents across the motel bed. Receipts, loans, statements, all laid out like a map of betrayal. But in the pocket, sewn deep into the lining, I found something else. A copy of the deed to my house. My heart stuttered. Across the bottom corner was a document I hadn't noticed before: an attempted deed transfer. The signature line was scrawled in that same crooked imitation of my hand, and below it, Derek's wife had signed as a witness. I sank onto the mattress, the paper trembling in my hands. They hadn't just wanted money, they had wanted the roof I built, the walls that kept them warm, the home where his first footsteps echoed. Killer line came cold as ice. They didn't just want my name, they wanted the house I bled for. The next morning, I met Keller in his office again. He scanned the forged deed, eyebrows lifting. "This isn't desperation anymore," he said. "This is premeditated theft." "What can we do?" I asked. He leaned back, fingers steepled. "We file criminal charges for fraud and attempted property theft. We fast-track the eviction, and we update your will immediately." "My will?" "Yes. If he's willing to forge documents while you're alive, imagine what happens after. Cut him out, legally and permanently. Redirect everything to someone or somewhere worthy." I thought of Anna's tears, of her voice breaking in court. I thought of the veterans in town, the scholarships I once dreamed of funding. Slowly, I nodded. Do it. Keller drafted the changes, each word pressed onto the page, like a nail sealing a coffin. I signed with steady hand, my real signature bold and clear. Derek Carter was no longer heir to my estate, my house, my savings. His name vanished in a single stroke. By evening, the sheriff served Derek with notice. Eviction and fraud charges official, stamped undeniable. I didn't have to be there to hear it, but I imagined the look on his face the moment his last mask slipped. News spread quickly. At the diner that night, the same waitress who had once pitied me leaned close and whispered, "The town finally knows the truth. You took everything back." Around us, heads nodded in approval. For once, the whispers weren't knives, they were applause. I closed the folder on the counter, its strap snapping shut like the crack of a gavel. The next morning, Keller called with final confirmation. "It's done. He's out of your will, and the fraud charges are filed. When the sheriff delivers the warrant, he won't be a free man. He'll be a defendant." The motel phone rang before dawn. I almost didn't answer, but something in the rhythm of it, desperate, uneven, pulled me to lift the receiver. "Dad," Anna's voice cracked, thin as glass. "Please, can we meet? It's bad. It's worse than you think." The silence between us said more than her words. I agreed to meet at the church hall, neutral ground. A place where truth didn't need a judge, just witnesses of a different kind. When I arrived, the stained glass windows glowed with morning light. Colors spilled across the floor like broken promises. Derek sat hunched at a table, hair uncombed, clothes wrinkled. Anna beside him, hands folded tight, as if in prayer. The leather folder rested beneath my arm. I placed it on the table before sitting, the strap catching the light. Derek looked up. His eyes were hollow. The fight burned out. "They're going to arrest me," he said, voice ragged. "The sheriff. He's got the papers. Dad, please, you have to stop this." Anna leaned forward, tears already streaking her cheeks. "He's made mistakes, yes, but he's still your son. Don't let it end like this." I stared at the two of them, my own children, one broken by his own greed, the other broken by her loyalty to him. The folder felt alive under my hand, pulsing with every receipt, every betrayal it contained. "You begged me once before," I said quietly, "for money, for trust, for forgiveness. And each time, I gave. And each time, you took more." Derek's hands trembled as he reached across the table. "This time is different. I'll change. I swear it." I didn't move. A forged signature is not a mistake. It's a choice. And choices have weight. Anna's voice rose, pleading. "Then let him carry the weight, but not prison. Please, Dad, show mercy." Killer line cut from my chest. Mercy without justice is just permission to sin again. Derek buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. For the first time he looked less like a man defiant and more like a boy afraid. "I don't want to lose everything," he whispered. "You already did," I said, placing my hand on the folder. "Not because I took it from you, but because you gave it away when you chose lies over love." Anna reached for my wrist, her touch trembling. "Please, just one more chance." I stood, lifting the folder with me. The strap slipped loose as I tightened my grip. My decision had already been carved into stone when I signed the will. The church hall was silent, except for the echo of my footsteps. As I walked away, I snapped the folder shut. The sound cracked through the room, echoing against the stained glass like the final toll of a bell. Neither of them followed me. Outside, on the church steps, the sheriff's cruiser pulled up. The officer stepped out, warrant in hand. The folder pressed against my side. I walked past him into the sunlight, leaving my children behind in the shadow. The town square had never been so full. Market day usually brought farmers and families, but today it carried something heavier: justice. Word had spread like fire. Derek Carter, the son who once wore my sacrifice like a crown, was about to face the sheriff's hand. I stood on the courthouse steps, the leather folder pressed against my chest, its strap cut into my palm, grounding me. Each page inside hummed with the weight of years, of pay stubs, tuition receipts, and now, forged documents that had turned love into evidence. The sheriff's cruiser pulled in. The door opened with a metallic groan, and Derek stepped out, flanked by deputies. His face was pale, drawn tight, a shadow of the proud man who once smirked across my kitchen table. Anna followed, shoulders bent under shame, her eyes searching for mine, but finding no refuge. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers turned into open declarations. There he is, the forger. After all his father gave him? Shameful. The sheriff guided him up the steps. Derek's hands shook, not yet cuffed, but trembling as though they were bound all the same. His wife trailed behind, her silence louder than any protest. The pastor stepped forward, his voice carrying across the square. Community is built on trust. Betrayal of family is betrayal of us all. The words landed heavy, each syllable a nail sealing Derek's coffin in the court of public respect. Derek turned toward me, eyes red, lips trembling. For the first time in this war, there was no anger, only desperation. "Dad," his voice cracked, reaching for something already gone. "Please, tell them I'm not. Tell them I'm still your son." The crowd hushed, waiting. I placed the folder on the stone railing, unbuckled the strap, and opened it wide for all to see. Pages fanned out, carried by the breeze like feathers torn from a broken bird. Receipts with my name, bank slips stamped paid, the forged deed with his crooked signature. Every sacrifice and every betrayal side by side in the light of day. I let the wind carry one page across the square, where it landed at a child's feet. The boy picked it up, squinting at the numbers, before his mother pulled him close. Truth had no need of speeches, it was plain in black and white. Killer line rose steady in my chest. A father's name is the first gift a child receives, and mine is the last thing you tried to steal. The sheriff laid a hand on Derek's shoulder. Firm, final. Time to go. Derek's knees buckled. He didn't resist, but his eyes stayed locked on mine as if hoping for reprieve. I offered none. Anna wept softly, covering her face. For her, I felt only sorrow. For him, only closure. The deputies led him inside the courthouse. The doors shut with a hollow boom that echoed through the square like a verdict. Neighbors turned to me then, not with pity, but with respect. Hands reached out to shake mine. Words of quiet dignity followed me. You stood tall. You did what had to be done. We see you. I gathered the papers that remained, stacking them neatly back into the folder. When I buckled the strap this time, it was not to protect evidence, but to seal the past. The folder, once a record of sacrifice, had become a shield against lies. And now, it would rest as something simpler. A reminder that truth cannot be erased. No matter how hard, betrayal tries to forge its own signature. As the crowd dispersed, I stood alone on the courthouse steps, folder pressed against my side. The autumn sun cut through the clouds, warm on my face. For the first time in years, the weight I carried felt lighter, not because it had lessened, but because it was finally seen. I walked down the steps, the folder under my arm. Its leather no longer felt like burden, but like armor polished by fire. And as I crossed the square, I realized dignity wasn't something I'd lost, it was something I had reclaimed, page by page.